Dognition canine. Woof woof.
So the Duke Puppy Kindergarten is that we partner with Eyes, Ears, Nose, and Paws, which is a service dog organization in Hillsborough, North Carolina. We partner with other service dog organizations as well, like Canine Companions. But at the moment, we're working with EEMP to raise, train, socialize, and educate their dogs, basically, or educate, the Duke community. So we have a puppy kindergarten where we have puppies from 8 weeks old, and the Duke students raise them, and they're, part of this incredibly rigorous training protocol to get the puppies ready to graduate, where they can go to service dog college. See, that's one of those questions that everybody had a lot of opinions, but no one had really looked at it in a rigorous way. And that was the point of the puppy kindergarten. We had an NIH project that ran for 10 semesters. We had 101 puppies enrolled in the study, and 50 of them were raised at Duke. And the point was to see the comparing the rearing of these two groups, because one group of puppies was raised in a human home. These service dog organizations have these puppy raisers, volunteers who dedicate their time and their money and their lives to kind of like raising a service dog to get prepared to go to service dog college. And then we had this other group of puppies that was intensively socialized at Duke. So like they would literally meet thousands of people. The important criteria was that all these experiences were positive, because of course we know that adverse experiences really affect puppies. So we know that in children, the more people, the more diverse groups of people you meet when you're very young, the better you are at solving problems, the more tolerant you are as you get older. And so we wanted to just see if the same was true for puppies. And so we compared the temperament and developing cognition of these two groups to see, what effect this kind of like extensive exposure would have on the puppies who are at Duke. Important thing to understand about the first 20 weeks is that the puppy's brain is not like a human brain. So, our brains are, they just take incredibly long to develop. So the human brain takes about 20 years, about like, your early 20s is about when your brain is, finished developing, and there's some plasticity, some changes that occur, but at like, that kind of like growth period, as we think of like, the growing of the human brain takes 20 years. A puppy is basically done in 20 weeks. So again, that's not to say that there's not plasticity, that they can't learn, but it's like, the major growth, the final stage of rapid brain development happens from 8 to 20 weeks old. So, the experiences they have and what they learn in that 20 weeks is really important, as it is to understand, what it is that's coming online well, because different cognitive skills develop at different times. And that was one of our major findings with the puppy kindergarten, is that, it's not like a light bulb that just kind of like goes on and suddenly like, everything's there. It's like, no, it's kind of like these flickering lights, like, first their olfaction and then their vision comes on and they start hearing. We knew that, but things like, self-control, when does that start to appear? When do they start good at like, understanding our body language? So these things kind of like happen gradually over time, over that first 20 weeks. And then that also is kind of like where their critical socialization period is. So, when we're younger, when puppies are younger, they, their fear system has not formally crystallized. And I just saw this with a puppy yesterday. She was going up to like a big dog, and she was like, "Hey," she didn't quite understand that she should be nervous, that kind of thing. The point of the whole puppy kindergarten is to, yes, find out if we can predict what makes service dogs successful, which different cognitive skills. And this is important because previously, to sort of like predict which service dog would be successful, people were really mainly looking at temperament, how calm they were, how friendly, how trainable they were. But cognition is not really that. Cognition is, the way you intake in information from all your senses and then use that to solve problems and navigate your world. And the reason why this is important with service dogs is because it takes like 2 years and costs $50,000. And even with people who have the most experience with dogs and, who've been training and graduating service dog for years and years, I mean, the success rate is only 50%. Like, we've been doing this for 100 years and the success rate is a chance. And so what we felt was the missing piece was really cognition. And cognition is not like IQ. It's these different cognitive skills that you have, things that people associate with intelligence, things like memory, like how well you remember things like, how you understand the physical world, how you understand physical properties, do objects move through one another. But then cognition is also things like your self-control. How good you are at inhibiting, like, the look before the leap, that kind of thing, and how you involve that in solving problems. And then also how good you are at reading others, reading the gestures and intentions of others. And then also how you connect. Because as we know now, EQ, emotional intelligence, it's a real thing. And the way that you use your relationship with others to solve problems and navigate the world around you, that's all really important. And these are all, and there's probably endless cognitive skills that dogs have. But those ones that I mentioned, they're really important to service dog success. And they're also really important to people's pets, like dogs who are pets, things like your self-control, how good you are at reading social relationships, like your memory. I mean, the thing about service dogs is that, yes, they're really specialized, and yes, it's very hard for them to graduate. But understanding service dogs can really help us with our pet dogs at home, because the culture has changed in such a way that, we were talking before about like dog owning in the 80s, like dogs were just like running around off leash, like they were like our kid, like they were like I grew up, like nobody knew where you were or cared as long as you were home for dinner. And that was really the lives that our dogs had too. But now most of the dogs, at least in the US, they have very different expectations, just like my kids have really different expectations. My kids are super scheduled. They're, they have a lot of activities. They are rarely off leash. I know exactly where my kids are at all times. And so, it's not to say whether it's better or worse, it's just different. And so now dogs, they rely on their owners. They're rarely off leash. So they, relying on their family to make sure they get the right exercise, make sure they go to class, make sure they learn the social skills to behave in a way that really allows them to fit into, our lives. And the reason why service dogs are important is because that's what they've been doing for 100 years. Service dogs have always had to walk nicely on a leash, greet the elderly with kindness, treat small children with patience, sit nicely under your chair for 3 hours while you're at a restaurant or at work. And so, not every pet dog is a service dog, but service dogs do have a lot of skills that we're now expecting of our dogs. So understanding the cognitive and temperamental profiles that a service dog should have is really helpful to understanding, the kinds of cognitive skills that would be helpful for our own dogs to fit into our lives in a way that we're expecting right now.
Dognition K9, hear that bark, woof woof. Smarter days for your best friend right from the start. Dognition K9, love your dog more. Brian Hare, Vanessa Woods, and Dognition GPT. Know the mind, watch the signs, help your dog feel seen. Dognition K9, woof woof.